Somewhere between your second glass of Pinot Grigio and your third episode about a serial killer, murder became a hobby. A wholesome one, apparently. The kind you mention at book club between discussions about sourdough starters and school pickup schedules. Naturally, an entire industry rose up to make sure you never have to feel weird about it. True crime podcasts now outnumber actual crimes in some zip codes. That's an exaggeration, but only barely. There are over 5,000 active true crime podcasts as of last year, each competing to describe the worst thing that ever happened to someone in the most soothing voice possible. The tone is key. You can't just report on a woman who was found in a drainage ditch. You have to do it like you're reading a bedtime story to an anxious golden retriever. Soft lighting energy, a little vocal fry. Maybe a giggle between the autopsy details and the ad for a mattress company. The genre found its spiritual center with a simple formula: 2 friends, some wine, a microphone, and a body count. Fans organized into communities with names that sound like sororities for people who watch forensic documentaries on date night. They traded case details the way fantasy football players trade stats, except the stats were stab wounds, and the players were real people who died. The merch aisle is where things get philosophically rich. You can now buy a throw pillow that says, "Stay sexy, don't get murdered," a coffee mug shaped like a chalk outline, a tote bag that reads, "Serial killer documentaries and chill." Someone sat down at a computer, designed that tote bag, uploaded it to a print-on-demand store, and presumably felt good about their contribution to culture. Someone else bought it, brought groceries home in it, walked past their neighbor, an actual living human, without making eye contact, then went inside to spend 4 hours learning about a stranger who was killed in 1987. The cosyification of violent death required some creative rebranding. Murder stopped being a tragedy and became content. Victims stopped being people and became characters in someone else's narrative arc. The language shifted accordingly. Fans described cases as wild and insane and a crazy ride. They have favorites. They rank them. They argue about which season of a real person's kidnapping was better paced. And then came the conventions. True crime conventions, held in hotel ballrooms in cities like Las Vegas and Orlando, where hundreds of enthusiasts gathered to meet their favorite hosts, attend panels about famous murders, and browse vendor tables selling artwork inspired by actual crime scenes. The energy, by all accounts, resembles a comic convention. Cosplay replaced by podcast merch hoodies. Autograph lines for people whose primary talent is describing how someone was dismembered while maintaining excellent comedic timing. Picture a hotel conference room, fluorescent lighting, a continental breakfast, and a keynote panel titled something like "The Art of the Cold Case," where a woman with a true crime Patreon discusses blood spatter patterns, while the audience takes notes in journals they bought from the gift shop downstairs. The gift shop sells scented candles named after famous cases. This is real. The candle economy has found a way to monetize murder, and the scent is lavender. So how did we get here? How did consuming detailed accounts of human suffering become the thing you do to unwind after a long day? The answer has roots in something older than podcasts. True crime has always had an audience. Truman Capote wrote In Cold Blood in 1966, Court TV launched in 1991. Serial dropped in 2014, and the genre went from niche to mainstream in about 12 episodes. Each iteration made the consumption a little easier, a little more portable, a little more compatible with doing the dishes. The podcast format was the final evolutionary step. You could absorb the details of a double homicide while commuting, folding laundry, or jogging through your subdivision. The friction disappeared entirely. You used to have to sit down and read a book or watch a screen. Now murder fills the dead air between picking up kids and starting dinner. It slips into the routine so smoothly that it stops registering as unusual. Wednesday is soccer practice and the BTK killer. Thursday is yoga and the Golden State case. The amateur sleuth phenomenon added a participatory layer that made passive consumption feel productive. Reddit threads dedicated to unsolved cases attracted thousands of users who genuinely believed, that crowdsourced speculation could crack cases that professionals with badges and forensic labs could not. Some of these threads identified suspects, real people, with families and jobs and no involvement whatsoever in any crime. People who woke up one morning to find their name trending in a subreddit because someone matched their jawline to a grainy surveillance photo from 2003. The Boston Marathon bombing investigation produced one of the most infamous examples. Reddit users identified a missing college student as a suspect. He was innocent. He was also dead. His body was found in a river days later. His family endured harassment and threats during the worst week of their lives because a crowd of strangers on the internet decided that enthusiasm was a substitute for evidence. The platform issued a rare apology. The amateur sleuthing continued the next week on a different case. The communities that form around these investigations describe themselves using words like justice and awareness. They believe they're performing a public service. And occasionally, very occasionally, crowdsourced attention does help. A cold case gets media coverage, a tip line gets a call, but the ratio of justice to harassment is staggeringly lopsided. For every case where public attention helped, there are dozens where innocent people were doxxed, stalked, or threatened by strangers who'd listened to 6 podcast episodes and decided they understood forensic psychology. The philosophical scaffolding underneath all of this is worth examining. The standard defense goes like this. True crime teaches women about danger. It's educational. It's empowering. Knowing how predators operate helps you avoid them. And there's a grain of something real in that argument. Fear is a reasonable response to a world where violence against women is genuinely common. Learning the patterns of predatory behavior has practical value. But that defense collapses pretty quickly when you look at what's actually being consumed. The most popular episodes aren't about prevention strategies or systemic failures in policing. They're about the grisliest details of the worst cases. The algorithm rewards escalation. Each episode needs to be darker, stranger, more twisted than the last. Prevention-focused content gets a fraction of the downloads. The audience, statistically, clicks on the darkness. The empowerment narrative is a frame hung around something that looks a lot more like entertainment, and entertainment built on real suffering has a cost that gets distributed unevenly. Podcast hosts build careers, fans build communities, merch designers build Etsy empires. The families of victims build nothing. They get to watch their worst experience become someone else's content strategy. Some families have spoken publicly about hearing their loved one's murder described incorrectly on a podcast that never contacted them. Others have found fan art depicting the crime scene, fan art of the place where their child died. The wine and murder aesthetic packages all of this in a wrapping that makes it socially acceptable. The humor functions as a release valve. If you're laughing, you're processing. If you're processing, you're engaging responsibly. If you're engaging responsibly, you can buy the tote bag without guilt. The entire framework is designed to prevent the one feeling that would make the whole enterprise uncomfortable, the recognition that you're being entertained by the worst day of someone's life. Critics of the genre get dismissed quickly. You're told you're overthinking it, that it's just podcasts, that people have always been fascinated by crime. All of which is true. People have always slowed down to look at car accidents too. The difference is that nobody built a subscription service around car accidents and sold scented candles at the convention. There's a version of true crime that serves the public. Investigative journalism that exposes wrongful convictions, reporting that holds police departments accountable, work that centers the victims in their families rather than the perpetrators in their mythology. That version exists. It's just not the version getting millions of downloads per episode and selling out hotel ballrooms. The version that dominates the market is the one where 2 charming hosts crack jokes between descriptions of strangulation, where the merch store has more SKUs than the evidence locker, and where the audience has developed a parasocial relationship with suffering that they've rebranded as self-care. So the next time you queue up an episode about a kidnapping to help you fall asleep, and millions of people do exactly this, every single night, consider the full supply chain of that comfort. A person suffered, a family shattered, a reporter or podcaster packaged it, an algorithm promoted it, a listener consumed it between a skincare routine and a guided meditation app. And somewhere in that chain, the human at the center of the story stopped being a person and became a lullaby. The lavender candle is optional.